2. All right, everyone. Good afternoon. This presentation is being recorded. My name is Brian Seymour. I'm the program manager for the Made in Baltimore program. We are a program of the Baltimore Development Corporation, which is our city's largest economic development agency. The work of Made in Baltimore is aimed at supporting and promoting makers and manufacturers here in Baltimore City and helping to grow the buy local movement in the Baltimore region. We offer business development services and resources to small batch manufacturers, makers, and retailers. We do this through programs like this workshop series, Tools of the Trade. Today, we are here with Jamyla Bennu from Oyin Handmade to discuss scaling up our recipes for wholesale. And we ask that you please remain muted through this presentation. We would love to see your faces. If you are comfortable, this is a safe learning space, so there's no such thing as a bad question. When you have a question, please quietly add it to the chat and it will be answered during scheduled Q&A segments. Don't feel pressured to keep up with note-taking. Again, this workshop is being recorded and will be posted on our website at a later date. Thank you to our parent agency, Baltimore Development Corporation. Thank you to you all for giving us your time today. And with that being said, Jamyla Bennu.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the invite, both Brian and Andy, and thank you for that awesome intro. I'm Jamyla Bennu. I'm the founder and head mixtress of Oyin Handmade, and we are based here in Baltimore. We make hair and body care products, and I am on a green screen and just now realizing how it does not let my texture fly. Look at that, it rounded me out in a way that I'm kind of uncomfortable with. But thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm thrilled to be able to talk about this stuff with you. Just to jump on in, am I back in our, oh, it took me to my document. Oh, do you need to make me the speaker again, Brian?
I have already given you host privileges.
Yeah, okay. So it's just weirdly not letting me use my arrow buttons to navigate. Happy Thursday to us. All righty, this is our story. We are an artisanal manufacturer of moisture-rich personal care products. We're formulated for highly textured hair and dry skin. I've been doing this for my own hair since around 2001, when there were not a lot of products on the market for moisture-rich products for highly textured hair, if you also wanted to use natural and pure ingredients. So I was looking for pure ingredients that were moisture-rich enough for my highly textured hair. And I was also looking for products that did not want to change the texture of my hair in order to style it. And so back then, that combination was really hard to find. And that's how the brand was born. We have, importantly for this workshop, we spent many, many years scaling up from our kitchen to our base to a number of external manufacturing facilities, and have been in e-commerce since 2003 when we built our first website, and steadily on to today. That's our roots and our core. And I strongly believe in the power of DTC, direct to consumer sales, in order to strengthen and give a strong foundation to a brand. Also, importantly for this workshop, we have experienced distribution with our brand. We both mass distribution in retail outlets such as Target, Whole Foods, Rite Aid, Sally Beauty, as well as independent distribution with independent retailers nationwide. We were independently distributed for about 10 years prior to entering into any large mass distribution relationships. And we continue to maintain those independent retailer relationships. Again, they're hugely important to the strength and stability of our brand. We also are in Whole Foods markets statewide in Maryland, and in multiple other Whole Foods markets throughout the region, the Mid-Atlantic region. So we've had a chance over the course of the past, almost 20 years to learn a lot about scaling and about scaling up our production, scaling up what what the different costs are for different wholesale channels, et cetera. I would love to share that with you today. I see some names that I'm familiar with. Thank you so much for, oh my goodness, y'all, hi. I would love, actually, if anyone feels like unmuting and saying hello, just that would be awesome. And I get, you know, that the camera is a terrifying thing. Hi, but I would love to hear some voices if you would love. Thank you. Hi. Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Jamyla. It's Ayana Woods.
Hi, Ayana. Hi, everybody. Oh, thanks for saying hello. All righty. So we are gonna move right in to this is information about our brand. You don't need to know that. But this is adapted from a training pitch. So all that information is in there as like our boilerplate story. So one of the first things I'd like us to talk about is the information gathering process. In order to scale our recipes, there are some basics that we need to cover. So question number one, this is kind of like a worksheet or checklist that I've made. And I just wanted to go over these so that we can discuss. Question one, are your recipes and formulas weight-based? If not, then convert them now. How many of y'all want to show me by a show of hands when you first started making your products? Were they in volume or weight? I will raise my hand loud and proud because I certainly had them by volume. I was using a cup of this, a teaspoon of that, drops of the other thing, right? And one of the first things that I had to do after I would discover the formulas that worked well for me, many of them were made from adapting recipes that I'd found in a book, for example, or online in some of the formularies of the places where I was buying my ingredients, they would have formularies. And so they might be by weight, but they wouldn't, or they might be by volume, right? And so I had like mixtures of things, and you know, my recipes were kind of all over the place. So one of the first things that I had to do, and I did this kind of just on my own in a spreadsheet, but I found these awesome calculators that can help you to manage this task with a lot more efficiency than I was able to manage them. So I'll pull a couple of them up. This is, I was looking at kind of a standalone calculator that I could link to so that everyone would, you know, who attended the workshop would be able to use them. So when do I have chat? Yeah, I'll just drop the link to this in the chat. Grams for the win. Yes, absolutely. All right, so here are two calculators that are easily available online, and we're going to do the amount to percentage calculator, right? So let's say we know that our whipped butter is some shea butter in it, right? I'll just say this. It has some of this, right? And then it's got some of that, right? And it's got some of the other thing. And let's see about that. So if we add 5, and then we click calculate. So now you see, and now we've got a 35-pound batch, but we don't know our percentages yet. But if we calculate, then it will show us our percentages, and they all add up to 100%. Those are messy percentages, but you know, you get it. Here, let me make this 6 and 4 so that we have nicer numbers. That's all righty. There we go. Those are pretty numbers. All righty. So now if we go back to our calculator, so now we have our right, and then we want, I'm sorry, they're in weights, and the next step is to put them into percentages. So that's the next checklist. Are your formulas in a scalable spreadsheet? There's another link here, which talks about converting things from discrete numbers into a scalable spreadsheet, and I will add that to the chat as well, in case you need any help assembling a spreadsheet like this, but here we go. So this was amounts to percentages. And then using this next worksheet, we're gonna take our this, that, the other thing recipe. And what was it? It was 50, 30, and 20, right? So we have 50% of this, 30% of that, and the other thing, it was 20%. Okay, so now we're gonna click calculate. And the cool thing about this calculator is that it is scalable, meaning now that we know the percentage of our core, and let's say our first batch, we always make 35-pound batches because that's, you know, how much our bowl can hold, right? Now, important to what we're doing is getting ready to scale. And so we've got to make sure that our recipes are scalable. So this means that if we want to change from our 10-pound batch to a 40-pound batch, because we've got a big show comp and we're going to need more of our products than normal, then we can recalculate and it will give us new amounts that are at the same percentage level. So this is how we ensure consistency across our different batch sizes, is by using scalable spreadsheets for our recipes. If anyone has any questions about that, then raise your hand on the icon. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the other items in our spreadsheet, okay? A next question is about our most used ingredients, because another thing we're going to talk through today is about the economies of scale. As we scale, one of the most awesome things is that we are making more we're making more product with less time. We're making more units with less effort. Hey, was that a question for me or a mistaken unmute?
That was a mistake, sorry.
No worries. So another thing as we get ready to scale is to get our information about our most used ingredients, the quantities that we buy them in, and where are the price breaks. So I've got another sheet here that illustrates the way that this will play out as we scale our recipes up. And for these examples, I pulled real time as of, a year or two ago. So not real time. We all know ingredients have, how many of y'all are going through ingredient and or supply chain issues related to the COVID pandemic? Raise your hand about that, because oof, right? The costs are going up so rapidly. Literally, one of our suppliers, we get an email every 3 to 6 weeks, like, oops, this product had this ingredient went up, this ingredient went up, this ingredient went up. And this is another reason why it is so important to keep track of our costs. There will be tools recommended here and kind of processes as well in the course of this workshop. But this is to get you started. I'd love if you could gather your costs in one place. This is a simple spreadsheet illustrating the principle, but I do recommend inventory management software, and I can recommend a couple at the end of the workshop. Mostly packaging, yes. Packaging is just disappearing from the face of the earth itself, and it's really different. Oh my goodness, Nicholas Hill. Glass jars went from $1.49 to $5.99 per. I just felt that in my gut. That is so painful. I'm so sorry. Yeah, exactly. A small slice of hell, I bet. So these ideas are important to keep track of as we think about the math that we're going to do down the line. How can we adjust for these rising costs and or make sure that we're not kind of costing ourselves out when we're making packaging choices or we're making ingredient choices? I am one to love, like, ooh, blue tansy oil, it'll make this product the most beautiful color of sea glass green, and it'll be so wonderful. And it's like, a really expensive essential oil, and I might love it, but if I keep my eye on my costs, I might know that I might need to look for an alternate amount or use a different oil or use it in a smaller, you know what I mean? Like we can't always include all of the good stuff in every single formula. There's a reason why there will be one or two hero ingredients, and that you really want to focus on like your high dollar ingredients and highlight them. Some of my early recipes had like just all the things. Like I would put everything good that I could find like in one product. And then as a result, my products would be crazy expensive to produce. And it's difficult to, past a certain point, it's difficult to recapture that cost. You know what I mean? Without like, you know, incredible branding and marketing kind of other investment, which is, you know, another cost as well. So all that is to say, let's take an example like coconut oil, okay? In this, consumer coconut oil, $8 a pound. Like if you go to the supermarket, you buy just 1 pound of coconut oil, you can expect to spend, you know, between $6 and $10, right? If I buy a gallon, it will be $4.50 a pound. And that's 7 pounds at a time. If I buy a bucket, it's going to be $2.86 a pound. And if I buy a drum, it'll be $2.50 a pound. So the reason why I think it's super helpful to do this kind of worksheet work is because it lets you know how much you're saving at each price break point, which determines your margins and your profit on every single bottle or package of everything that you sell. So taking something, for example, like shea butter goes from $10 a pound to $1.50 a pound, but that's if you find 400 pound purchase, you know, a place to purchase a full drum of shea butter, which is hard to find. Say again. I didn't hear you. Feel free. Yes, and consider the storage. Thank you, Ayana, because if you don't have space for the drum, is it worth saving $3 a pound? Exactly. And you'll see some of these items, like it's only between the 35 pound bucket and the 400 pound drum of coconut oil, there isn't really a huge enough difference to allow for that difference, for example, that Ayana just brought up. If you're going to save, you know, 36 cents a pound, but you need to get a external storage space with a loading dock in order to take delivery of that item, then maybe it's not the time to save that particular 36 cents and we can find cost savings elsewhere. I understand, says the girl who has a drum of castor oil in her garage for 3 months. It's so real. So real. So yeah, but other items such as your preservative, like for us, it's definitely worth it to find space to store a drum because it reduces the cost of our preservative by more than half. So that's these are the kinds of things that are within each of our costing decisions. Similar thing for your packaging, your cost per unit, and any price breaks and your current volume at which you're ordering them, and your labeling sources. What is your cost per label and what is the volume at which you're currently ordering them? There's another set of scaling questions about space. What is your storage area in your current workspace? What's your linear feet and height of shelving? Calculate that because it will determine how much and what size of everything you can purchase, keep, and store. Same thing for your top 5 products, your best-selling products, maybe your most profitable products, if you know your cost of goods. What size are your batches? What size are your vessels? What equipment are you using? And also, what are the upgrade points and costs for your equipment? So these are the equipment information I would like to do. I have another like mini chart about equipment upgrades. So that we can talk through a couple of the steps, right? Because equipment is a major piece of the scaling production question. So let's take our mixing capacity, right? This is something that you might be with a KitchenAid stick blender or maybe a countertop stand blender can do a lot. And this is the reason why I kind of said at the consumer and hobby level, the cost for each of these things is zero. We know a KitchenAid mixer is not $0, right? It costs quite a couple $100, but many of us got into this type of making because we already had the equipment. Much of the equipment overlaps with kitchen equipment. And I know it was a couple of years before I had to buy a dedicated mixer because I was able to use the equipment that I already had in my kitchen. So, but again, just for the sake of the worksheet, I set these items at 0. Of course, we understand that everything has a cost. So KitchenAid to a commercial KitchenAid to a Hobart stand mixer to an immersion blender is one example. Vessels, you might be moving from a bowl or a stock pot on your stove to an extra large restaurant supply stock pot, and then to a steam jacketed kettle or a water jacketed oil melter or something like that. You may be moving from a bowl to a bucket to a drum or to a barrel. And those are other things that have, you know, additional costs at each price break, right? Your immersion blender might go from, you might be using a whisk as you're testing your tiny recipes, and then you might need your KitchenAid stick blender, and that'll cost you $100. And then you might need a commercial kitchen wearing or RoboCoupe, and that will cost $450. And then you might need a really big, you know, mounted high shear horsepower mixer, because if you've upgraded to an 80-gallon kettle to do your mixing in, or you're doing a 500-pound batch in a drum, then even your Hobart or your RoboCoupe will not be more powerful enough to move that volume of product. So you'll also need to upgrade your mixer as well. So these are some of the things these are some of the ways in which the equipment kind of cascades itself. For example, if you know, okay, I've got the room to store my drums, I'm ready to make a really batch and really save some time and labor. And then you get your drum and you get all your equipment and you realize your mixer is not up to snuff. And you've got, I've got a $10,000 expenditure I've got to figure out how to make so that I can use these other equipment pieces that I've already put in place. So this is something that it makes sense to keep track of at each step. Like, think about what you're using, and then have your eye on the next thing, and just keep it, you know, like this in a spreadsheet or in a notebook or something, so that you can keep an eye on what's next for your business and work through the pieces, not just the cost savings, but also the storage requirements, any additional equipment needs that are going to interrelate with each level of upgrades. Okay. And back to the worksheet, labeling, etc. Bestsellers and average monthly units. So that's handy. Margins, are your operating expenses and labor covered in your calculations? And can you invest in enough marketing to move more products? And so we'll get into all of these questions. Hey, Kelly, are you asking a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yay!
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Good. I wanted to know, one, this is an excellent spreadsheet. Would you be able to share this with everyone by chance?
Yes,
or
absolutely.
Okay. And
absolutely.
Thank you. And then my next question would be, how often would you recommend updating your economies of scale? It's hard to kind of, especially in the times now, you go to a website and look at, let's say for the cost of shea butter or something.
Yeah.
The price could be something one week and you have to order more in a couple of more weeks, and it's, you know, gone up by $10 or $20 or so. So how would you recommend, you know, like the frequency of updating this? Yeah,
absolutely. So there's a piece of software that I'm going to recommend, which here it is. Okay, next slide. So this is inventory management software. So the one I'm going to recommend, if you search inventory management software, you will find an entire world and universe of software that is built to handle the keeping track of that question. It's awesome. And the one I'm going to recommend, I'm recommended because it is super affordable and because it integrates with many marketplaces that are specific to people at along the scale, at a number of points along the scaling journey. So let me take you on a quick walkthrough of this. This is they have a 14-day free trial, right? And they integrate with all of these marketplaces. We don't happen to be on any of those marketplaces, but I still find the software incredibly useful because it keeps track, like you mentioned, of all of those levels. The way it does it is by if you input your PO, your invoice, basically, then you if you buy shea butter for $10 a pound, and then the next time you buy it is $14 a pound, this software recalculates your cost of goods but based on what you've actually spent on the materials that are in the recipes that are in the system. I want to see if it's possible to do like a little walkthrough.
So do this allow you to enter in your recipes in the system along with, I guess, like you keep track, or you would put the price of your ingredients in this particular software and it tracks it for you? This would be a lifesaver for me.
It's incredible. And when I found it, honey,
it's so time consuming for me to go out here, and I'm literally going from recipe to recipe, and with the prices going up, to try to determine if I'm calculating, my products are priced properly, and the price, you just don't know how often you have to do it with the prices going up the way that they are. So this is definitely a game changer for me.
It is. And it's wonderful because it does, it also, you can also include your overhead costs in this system. And again, like, I'm not using the system to its fullest extent. We actually just had a meeting last week about wiping it entirely, because the last time, because we don't use it with all of our costs in the way that it can be used. But if you do, it is super, super powerful for keeping track of all of what you said. And it's built to be able to adjust kind of on the fly, like for your historical, because you still got $10 shea butter in your warehouse, even if you're buying $14 shea butter today. And so the system can kind of average it out and then include it in your future calculations rolling forward. But and it's got reporting. It's really, really robust, great functionality, and it's made for makers. I think it was made by and initially for Etsy sellers. So the ideas were it was pretty like handmade. You make one thing and it costs these stuff. And when I first joined, that's kind of how it was. But now they have multiple layers of, like, you can create a component, which for me would be a bulk batch, and then you can create the manufactured product, which is the bottle. So for me, I've made like a set of recipes that are for my bulk batches, which include, my this, that, and the other thing stuff, and the amounts and my standard batch size. And then I've also made recipes for each of the sizes and variations of. So if I make honey hemp conditioner, for example, and I make it in a 400-pound batch, I also have 3. That's a component. And that component is used in 3 other products, which are a 2-ounce honey hemp, which contains 2 ounces of that component, plus a 2-ounce bottle, a 2-ounce cap, a label, and, a minute of labor. And then I also have a variation, which is a 8-ounce honey hemp, which contains an 8-ounce bottle, an 8-ounce label, an 8-ounce cap, and a minute and a half of labor. And I have an item called the liter refill of honey hemp, which contains 33 ounces of that component product, plus a 33-ounce bottle, a 33-ounce label, a 33-ounce cap, and 2 minutes of labor. So in that way, you're able to kind of build out, using that same component material, multiple iterations of the same product, multiple sizes in that way. And it's just super handy. Even more so if you do use any of the platforms with which it directly integrates, because then it can keep a real-time inventory of your final products as well, and kind of pull through what you've made. And that's the part that we don't use because it doesn't integrate with any of our marketplaces. But I still find it useful to develop costing and to keep track of our COGS. So highly recommend.
I'm on this call and it's teaching you about your business. And she's telling us about this website.
You're off mute, Kareem. But hi to whoever's in the room with you. Come on over. Take a look.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Alrighty, so that is so where was I? We're in COG. Oh, right. So the recipe worksheet, right? So the next thing actually was COGS class, capturing other costs. So there's in my worksheet, it does not account for any of these other items, which can be captured in a system like CraftyBase. But those things like overhead, R&D, if you pay externally for that, any wastage during bottling, shipping of materials or finished products, and marketing costs. So I'm gonna move back over to the missing tab. So this is the real meat of this worksheet, and I see some of you are in here, there is that tab is some instructions and an intro, and you're not gonna be able to edit this, but feel free to make a copy and add to your own Google Drive so that you can play around with it. And these are the instructions on the very first tab. And one thing that is important, and let me highlight it, is to edit within the orange boxes only on tab 3, okay? So once you work through these worksheets and you have all your pricing, then you add your ingredients and components to tab 2, which is where your ingredient costs will be worked out. And then in tab 3, you actually add your recipe by percentage of weight, and you edit only within the orange boxes. So let's go over to tab 3 and look at this. So these orange boxes include, these are your recipes, right? So here's all the stuff that's going in. This is just a control cell that makes sure that it all adds up to 100%, right? Once we've got that in, then we know, and then it's also assumes that a payment for your labor. I added $20 for an hour of labor, assuming, you know, that something takes an hour to make in an 8-gallon, 1-gallon, you know, bowl full size batch. And then we've got, because labor does go up and time does go up for the larger batches often, but not by an amount that's that's the same percentage as the batch. A 35-pound batch might just take me an hour and a half because it's got, you know, a little bit more. Maybe the oils take longer to melt, you know, maybe this in 2 hours I can do a small drum, and then maybe in 2.5 hours I can do a large drum, so of 400 pounds. So these examples, again, for simplicity, I just calculated these examples calculate the size of the batch and the cost directly as if each size batch is being made by one of these, is the ingredients cost is changing at each batch size directly according to this spreadsheet. And I know that's not how things work, and that's why I call this a very quick and dirty worksheet. It's not a whole thing, y'all. Please, you know, don't run your whole business based on this spreadsheet. It's very quick and dirty. But how do you calculate? I see a question. How much do you calculate how much labor should be? Is there a formula for that? No, there is not. These numbers are kind of random, but I just tell you what you imagine what you're paying yourself, right? It's $15 an hour is minimum wage, right? Let's give ourselves 20. Let's splurge a little on ourselves, right? We're fabulous CEOs. Let's do it. So assuming, and then, but really it's timing your batches and seeing how much time it actually takes you, because a 1 hour batch, you know, you've still got to clear your space and then you got to clean it up after. And so, you know, like be realistic about your time, and it's just good to calculate it. Oh, good. Ayana Woods has been working in Crafty Base already, creating a component to assess the cost plus labor. And you can add an hourly wage for yourself there. That is awesome. And then when you add how long it takes, it adds to the cost per unit. Yay, thank you so much for adding that, Ayana. Very cool. So again, on my quick and dirty stuff, so we've got a rough cost for the batch, which includes this gently scaling labor cost, as well as all of the ingredients at the end. These ingredients, again, reflect price break. So you don't have to use, depending on how you fill out your ingredients cost tab, that will populate, you know, however you like. Then this also assumes that this is what you're going to edit to see how many units you get per pound. And this all assumes that your recipe is in pounds, right? So let's say, what does this look like? Units per pound. So apparently this is a 2-ounce item. What is it? Lotion. This is 2-ounce cream. And this is your price that you retail it for. So this retails for $18. Apparently we're into fine skincare, and then wholesales. This is a calculation, actually, that we do our wholesale at 50% off. Some people do 50% off. We do 40% off. And that's what this calculation is. It takes this retail price and multiplies it by 0.6. And this gives you your wholesale margin. And it also, a couple of assumptions in this spreadsheet are that this is the total retail net based on how many units you get per pound. So again, it assumes no wastage, you don't spill or drop anything. It assumes that you sell every single thing that you make. And so, you know, that doesn't include operating costs or overhead or anything like that. This is really just quick and dirty. If I were to reduce my ingredients cost by this much, what would that do to my per unit cost, et cetera, right? Crafty Base is much more granular and detailed. This is a rough kind of a way to show an example of the ways that economies of scale can show up in your business. So looking at this, this is a chart that pulls out the cost per unit versus the batch cost, because as we lower our cost, as we make bigger and bigger batches, our cost per unit goes down significantly. It starts here at 287. That's this line 18 here, and then we can get it down to 173. And so that is almost $1 savings in our cost per unit just from buying more of our ingredients. All of that is in the size, most of that is in the ingredient price breaks. And so most of that savings of $1 comes from per unit. And then the way that lays out is we're making an extra $1-ish on each retail item that we sell. And on wholesale, same, that extra $1 shows up here in our wholesale margins as well. Is that everything on this worksheet? I think it is. That's all of the tabs. But yeah, to me, I feel like it's really, hey, oh, go ahead, Kelly. It's really helpful just to kind of hammer through some ideas. Like, is it worth it to, because these equipment upgrades have costs. Is it worth it to buy this larger vessel? What will it do to my, you know what I mean, to my pricing? And that can help you get close. Yeah, Kelly.
Hi. So I heard you mention about like the wholesale cost. So thank you for pointing out, as far as like how much you should pay yourself, because that's always been a question I had. But for wholesale, how were you able to determine if you were going to provide 50% discount or 40% discount? Like, are there any type of calculations that can be used to kind of tell you, which percentage off you should be getting, or is it just preference?
I think it's just preference. There's the Crafty Base does have a calculator where you can put in your desired margin. It'll help you arrive at your costing or at your pricing. But it works off your cost. Like if it costs $1.50, then you'll have to put, I want a 400% margin, so I'm gonna sell it for $6, or you know what I mean? Like, then it's got to be more for retail if I sell it to a wholesaler for $6, and then it kind of works upward from your cost. My own personal story was flipped a little bit backwards. We didn't discover our costing until after we had already priced our product. And so that was when we figured it out. We didn't have the margins to be able to offer a 50% discount to our wholesale relationships, just because we hadn't done, because of how we learned. Like, it was my hobby. I was like, okay, I guess it should cost $10. You know what I mean? Like, so I hadn't done the math first that I'm suggesting you do. This is why you got to do your math. But as a result, we discovered that many retailers are like, if you offer a 50% margin, they will happily take it, of course. And if you offer a 40%, they might take that too. So everything, as they say in business, is negotiable.
How much?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All righty. So moving back. So some questions about that are also not captured directly in the spreadsheet, but I would love to discuss, are questions about basically marketing and moving the units. Okay. How many units would your business need to sell in a month in order to pay for your monthly overhead or for the increased costs to scale? Remember that part of the spreadsheet where we talked about how much a mixer costs and how much the extra drum, or do you have enough room to store the extra drum, etc. So thinking about that, also how much marketing spend or activity would be necessary to move that amount of product, because again, moving back to this, like this will get you, this, how many units? 3,200 units at the 400-pound batch, right? Can I move 3,000 units of this one product in a month? Probably not. So this 50,000 total retail net, right? That's not going to come to me in the month that I spend on all this packaging, right? Like, this is $5,000 in packaging alone. Can I afford to spend $5,000 on packaging and not see it back for the 6 months it takes me to sell these 3,000 units of product? You know what I mean? So those are the kinds of questions to think about as you begin thinking about scaling, because the investments are up front, whereas the revenues trickle in. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Okay. So another thing to think about, as because we're talking about scaling for wholesale, and that's why I keep coming back to cost, right? Because scaling is about equipment and production and operations and labor, but scaling for wholesale is also about the math of distribution, the math of sales agents. Is someone going to take a commission? Like, did the sales agent help you get this retail relationship and they're going to take a commission of it? You know what I mean? Like, is there any platform costs, for example? Like, we sell to some of our independent retailers through the platform, which has costing because they charge a percentage on each sale. And so like our discount of 40%, that is, you know, after we get that sale, there's an additional cost of, I think, 25% or 15% that is taken off the top of that. So that means our discount is really not 40%. Our discount is actually 55% after Fair takes their cut. You know what I mean? And so these kind of platform costs and other kinds of things are really important to keep an eye on as you begin every new wholesale relationship. Does the retailer require a GSA? A GSA is a guaranteed sales agreement. And what that means is that the retailer is responsible for nothing. They're purchasing your product and giving you the money for the PO that they purchased, but they're not gonna be taking, they're not gonna be liable for any lost sale. And so that means if they have to discount it, if it doesn't sell, if it doesn't move off that shelf, they will send you a bill. They'll discount it and send you a bill for that discounted amount because you've signed this guaranteed sales agreement with them. And this is a way that retailers, especially big box retailers, mitigate their own risk, but it puts the manufacturer in an incredibly vulnerable position. You know, and there is not much that you can do about the kinds of decisions that the retailer then makes, which will determine to some part how well your product does there, you know, but you are liable for how the product performs, whether or not it's, you know, placed on the end cap or put in the corner where no one can see it. You're still liable for that product being sold. So that's a really important thing to keep track of. And each of these questions, you know, are there distribution costs? Are there platform costs? Did you hire a sales agent, et cetera? Do you owe someone commission? Each of these things changes your profitability picture. So as you are considering wholesale, definitely examine each channel carefully, determine if it fits your brand and your goals, and do that math. Yeah. Yes. Thanks, Nicholas. I'm happy that it was helpful for you, for real. There's because it's so fun to grow. You know what I mean? Like oh my gosh, I love new equipment. I love, you know, finding efficiencies. All that stuff is amazing. And wholesale relationships are an incredible tool to accelerate growth because they give you that, you know, you get that a lump sum, it's a larger order. And then with that cash, you can then invest back into your business and get some more. It's an awesome, wonderful cycle. But there are these other things that are not on the top of that of that agreement or that relationship. They're not in the front. Those also trickle in over time. So I'm man, shout from the rooftops about this stuff. Yeah, pay to play. You have, man, so real. Because I'm going to read that out loud since this is being recorded, but yeah, appreciating what we're saying about platform costs and drilling down to the point of view of wholesale. Why should I discount my product? But you do have to pay to play. It's true. Everyone, and this is remember at the beginning when I was in my introduction, I talked about the power of direct to consumer sales and how important it is to build up a strong customer base on your own, separate from and parallel to your retail relationships. It's an owned channel. you can develop your own relationship with your customers, and it is literally priceless. There's nothing that can compare to having your own owned relationships with your customer base. This next slide is called Shopping Class, and it's about we actually went through it on the spreadsheet itself, but this is the kind of illustrated thing, right? We're talking about if you purchase in bulk at lower cost, it's more expensive to outlay. If you need more room to store more materials, it's a larger space. Here's my illustration of our awesome commercial KitchenAid stand mixer that runs around $400 to $600. And then there's Hobart floor mounted, 60 quart gigantic mixer, which runs about $10,000. And so like this is just an example of the kinds of differences in some of the equipment, and what the cost of that larger batch can be in terms of equipment upgrades, et cetera. And I think this is our very last slide. And this one is about finding efficiencies and how to do more with less. For us, one of our very first and most difficult hurdles to get over the packaging bottleneck, and I apologize for the pun, but kind of not really. I'm a cornball. I'm going to stand by that pun, actually. I retract my apology. One of the things that we did at that time was bottling parties, which was a way to, with our strong customer relationships, kind of galvanize, create community, and also share like the joy and excitement of making stuff with our customers. And this was one of the very first things that we did. We were bottling with spoons, and we were like, it's almost Christmas. What are we gonna do? We can't do all of this. And we, ordered a bunch of pizzas, played a lot of music, gave everybody some gloves and bonnets, and we would bottle together, and folks would come through. We'd give them lots of free products, order some pizza, and we would in the evening bottling together. So, but of course, there's also machines. There's things that that can label for you. I would be happy to share this little graph. This was our team posted this on our social media yesterday. This is our labeling machine at work. Probably during Black Friday, judging from how many liters they're getting ready. But yeah, this little machine is awesome. Label applicator, and things like this little machine. The simplest of machines. It's a beverage dispenser. We use the heck out of these things in all of our like liquid pourables, our herbal sprays, our bath oil, all of those things. We would happily use those beverage dispensers. Generally, restaurant supply stores are your friend. Raise your hand if you've gotten equipment from a restaurant supply store. Those things, yeah, they're amazing. There's so much great overlap. And of course, I know that some of you guys are in food preparation, so of course you're using restaurant supply, but for some of us in personal care, we may not know initially like how much overlap there is in the equipment. Ayana's on her way there now. Wonderful. Yeah, the restaurantstore.com does have a local warehouse, and so that is very, very handy for picking things up locally. And there's also restaurantstore.com, which is an online retailer. And I think that's the end of my slides, but I'm happy to answer questions if there's anything else that you are challenged by right now as you think about scaling. Pancake mix dispensers. Ooh, nice. And is that something you use for your packaging process? I'm gonna look that up. Is it like a powder dispenser or a batter dispenser? I'm super curious. For the bottom filter. Oh, yay! Very cool. I love it. Yeah, Kelly, did you have a question?
Yes, I have so many questions. I don't want to jeopardize this whole. I think I need a one-on-one. but a lot of this, this is great information for me. A lot of equipment and things like that, like I spend time online, like Googling. There's no guide that I've been able to find that tells me, okay, if I mix, you find yourself going from mixing like you said, you're working at home in your basement, starting off mixing like batches of product and like a just a standard stainless steel bowl, and then you go with like a 20 quart bowl. Now you're ready to go to a floor mixer, or a bigger mixer, but there's really no guide out there or guidance that kind of directs you. Okay, if you're scaling up to this level, I'm very intentional about scaling. I don't want to jump out there too soon, or, I know I've seen the cost on some of these mixers. So now that you've verified, like they cost $10,000, the one that I'm looking at next does not cost $10,000. It costs a couple of thousand, but again, it's trying to navigate or determine like what are some of the things you may need. Like me finding, I know Ayana just mentioned the pancake batter dispenser. I saw, it might've been on Instagram or something, where I saw like another maker using it to dispense like oils in the jars. I was like, oh yes, because you waste so much on the table. So I have a hard time sometimes trying to figure out what type of equipment, like if you're making more of a product, what are some of the recommendations on equipment to utilize and to, making the next size batch and so forth. That's kind of like a point for me. Like you just kind of figure out, okay, well, this works for a couple of months. I need to buy something, but still trying to be cost effective,
There's, I love what Ayana just said. She said, hire a young, lazy person. Because a lot of her packaging equipment ideas came from interns and mentees. That is so real, because they'll find the pain point, right? They'll be like, cranking the pump, because that's one of the things we used to use was a drum pump or a bucket pump. So we would get, like, for some of our thicker products, we would get these drum pumps, and then we pump them into our bottles. And it was definitely the young person who was on that, whose arm got tired, who was like, there's got to be a better way. And they will help you with your research, right?
It's kind of like you take these test turns going from, okay, this is not working. You get the larger, the huge bowls, like to mix, like I'm mixing stuff by hand right now. And I'm like, okay, my arm is tired. Like this is something else.
And unfortunately, there's not like a standard. I definitely suggest browsing through the restaurant supply store websites. You can learn so much about what's out there. For example, we're fitting out our next facility. Woohoo! We're moving next month. And in doing, like, looking for a thing, right? That was I found some whole other site. I was looking for a stand to put our new melting kettle on, and thank you. And then like found a stand that had integrated like baker tray shelving, and I was like, who knew? I had no idea. I just wanted a tall table to put it on so I could sit under it and then like put it on the table next to me. But this has integrated tables. So you got one of those, Ayana? Oh! Literally, I was last month years old when I discovered that existed. And that's the thing. It's a constant learning, and it's not, and a lot of what equipment is going to work for you depends on your own process. And so like that works for me, because we have a warm fill product. We need it to fill it warm, and then it needs to stay still long enough to cool and solidifies. This for our pomade, right? Some of our other products, that wouldn't be necessary. We fill it and it's a liquid. It just goes in a cap and we put it on the table. So for that, we just use rolling carts. We don't need, and those come just next to the bottling machine, and we leave that there. But to use a stand for our melter that puts our whole bottling and making procedure in one small 3-foot footprint.
Right.
What? And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't been looking for a stand for my melter. So if I don't have a melter, I don't know that even exists, because I'm not, you know what I mean? So I highly recommend just browsing at all times. Like just go set some time, like your dream time once a month or so, to just kind of scale through and do some scaling shopping. See what you think might be next, right? Identify your pain points. Whatever hurts at the end of the day, look up what would fix that. Right. let your body knowledge help guide you.
Definitely a mixer.
Yeah. So yeah, and that was the thing when we had all our jackhammers. I'm sorry, we call them jackhammers. All the large immersion blenders.
Yeah.
So we went right in so that would be okay. My arm is sore. Let me find. Isn't there a way to hold this? And I found drum clamps. Never occurred to me until my arm got sore. But there's a way to clamp the.
Yeah, I never knew.
You know,
I saw these, but I hear people complaining that they're heavy, and I'm like, well, do I get one or not?
Right,
but now
right.
you just, so now I know what to look for if I need to get
There
one
you
of them. An
Yes.
industrialized one, at least.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. I'm taking notes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What else can we talk about? I guess, I can also talk for a moment. Yeah, be more natural. I use a baker's rack for cooling jars of products. And if anyone wants one, when we move, we're not taking them with us because we have different racks now. So if anyone wants one, send me an email. Because that's maybe I'll connect with Andy. Like we might have like a warehouse sale after we move, like about all the equipment that we're not taking. We may have a couple of drums available. We may have a couple of baker's racks, So yeah, like I'll see if Andy can maybe put out an email or let people know.
Drop that in the newsletter.
Yeah.
As soon as he sends it
yay! Over. Okay, good. Thank you. Very cool. And what else? Oh, process documentation. Let's talk about that. That's another huge thing, and it's not on my spreadsheet. I mean, my what did I just share? My presentation. So apologies for that, but that is huge. We also, that's as we're going through our calculators, right? And now we've got our percentages. It's also really important to document your processes. So after you get all your recipes in your wonderful scalable spreadsheet, also make sure to include step-by-step processes, including things like the vessel size to use, how long to melt something for, like we use a lot of shea butter and we always like to melt our shea butter gently. So we have to put in the process documentation, don't let it go over X degree, because then that destroys some of the nutritional properties of it. And so we don't want to heat it till it smokes. At that point, we might as well be using petroleum. Not true, but you know what I mean? Like there's things that you have to document so that your process can be portable, because that's another level of scalability. It can't be you all the time. And so in order for it to not be you, you've got to be able to duplicate and make consistent every aspect of your process, all the magic, right? That's got to go into the process, and it's got to be documented to the nth degree so that your products can come out as beautifully and consistently as they do when you make them yourself.
Did you get someone to help you do your processes? Or I'm kind of going through that now.
Yeah.
Looking to, hire additional staff than what I have. And I've come to notice the importance of, I'm not going to be able to be here all the time to, verbally walk somebody or handhold or tell them all the time. So I'm starting to do that now. Did you have someone help you write up your processes and procedures to save time, or did you just tackle it yourself?
So we tackled it in-house. It wasn't just me. We also have a production and operations person who's been with us for, like 12 years now, I think. And so he and I together did that documentation work over some time. It wasn't instant. It took us a long time. This is not something you're gonna sit down in an afternoon or over a weekend and get done, especially if you have a bunch of products, and for us, a lot of the stuff was in my head. Like I had the recipe written down. I was like, then you cook it. But you know what I mean? So there was a lot that had to be pulled out and added in. And that was, in part, we did it kind of recipe by recipe, like as we would, this is recipe week. When I make this, shadow me and take notes, and then we can get the process down. So yeah.
Thank you.
Nicholas Hill's got a question. You are so welcome. There's what decisions did we consider in the transition from house to commercial facility? Cottage food operation, residential kitchen, selling at markets and pop-ups. Awesome and good question. Let me think. For us, well, when we first moved out, I was pregnant with my first kid, and the main decision was we got to stop stepping over boxes. There's nothing in our house but boxes. We thought we might need room for an extra human, but there's for real, there was an affordability question, because moving out of your home, you're essentially doubling at least your overhead. You're incurring an entire new set of costs, everything from electricity to rent to internet is going to need to be duplicated there. And so there's definitely, for us, our calculation was, again, quick and dirty. This is how we did things back then. Now we do them a little less quick, slightly cleaner, but it was real quick and dirty back then. So we were like, if we have enough on a monthly basis rolling to cover twice this rent, then we will go get a space. That was our metric. We were like, there's got to be enough for twice what the cost will be. We need double that in profit each month in order to feel comfortable moving. And that's not a very sophisticated formula, but that's what we needed kind of emotionally to make that leap. And at that time, just as for a sense of like scope and timing, at the time that we moved out of our home, we had been working exclusively as makers running this business for about 4 or 5 years. Like, that's how when we moved here to Baltimore, we moved here because the basement was big enough to run Oyin in it. that was what we needed. We needed more space. We lived in New York. We were like, we gotta go to a place where we can afford some space. And this was it. And it took us 3.5 years to move out. So that was still like, and 3.5 years of 100% doing nothing but that in our home. So like, just, it wasn't like we launched and then we got a factory. Nah, we launched, we did it on the side for probably 2 to 3 years. Then it became our full-time situation. We did that for another 3.5 to 4 years before we ever moved out. So that was slow. Things don't have to go as slow. Internet's a whole nother place nowadays. There's tools available to help people grow faster. But just, I was a mentor in Made in Baltimore's Home Run Academy, and I felt kind of bad because every time I did a workshop or spoke to someone, I was like, don't move out your house. But the whole course was like to try to get people to move out into commercial space. I love it. I love having a commercial space. It's awesome. It's a huge milestone. Baltimore's full of amazing spaces. And don't move out your house until you have to and until you can comfortably afford it. For real. Think of it as the time that you spend under your residential roof is a capital investment in your business. That's a good way to think about it. All those boxes we were stepping over, all the, what I mean, all the friends we made with our postal people, all of that stuff, that was us investing that amount of money that we weren't spending on overhead. That was an in-kind donation in the business. Okay. So yes, get on out. It's great. Hey, get on out when you can, but don't feel like you have to get out in order to be legitimate. Don't feel like you have to get out in order to grow. Okay. You are investing your time, your labor, and your square footage in your business's growth, and that counts too. Okay. Kelly, do you have another question?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just teasing you. I was like, Andy has been trying his best. I've had so many of these questions. And he's been trying to get me in touch with you. I said, I think I've been trying. I know she's super busy. I was like, I think I've been trying to reach her since we owe each other coffee.
Oh, too funny.
I need to pick your brain. Yes.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here today, because here it is.
Yeah.
Okay, I see Fly Nerd. How you doing, girl? All right, so if there's no additional questions, then I think we can wrap up. I'm so glad that you guys were here. This stuff, you know, it's in my head all the time. It's nice to be able to talk to people who are interested and who want to hear about it. Hey, Be More Natural, you got a question?
I do. Hi, Jamyla. Quick question. So do you have any recommendations for finding people who can come in and help you with production, you know, who can make soap and make, you know, moisturizers? Is that a process? Is there a process or any recommendation that you have around how to do that?
Yeah, so there's I do not. It's a challenge. So two things. Again, when I told you, like, we initially, especially when we were in our home, we were just in the friends and family zone because it was in our home, and we were like, we don't know, we were new in town, we can't just be hiring out off of Craigslist or whatever, and then, like, in our basement, ooh, so it felt scary. But but friends and family would come up and they would be able to help us with, like, specific and discrete tasks, like, oh, can you print out these 30 orders that, you know, from the past week or so? Can you print them out for me and type them into the USPS.com? Like, that's a thing that we could get help with. Or, you know, someone could come and help, you know, to bottle. That's a really nice intro kind of thing. But then in general, like, we have never found someone to hire who already knows how to make soap, for example. And this is why process documentation becomes so important, because you know what I mean? Like, an affinity to the idea. And then also, like, you may not want that, like, to hire a soap maker because you make soap. You know what I mean? Like, that's a whole non-competition situation. People have whole clauses in their employment contracts that they don't want to hire soap makers, you know? Ayana mentioned something really important about food service experience. That is definitely something that we found. Like, we in our early job listings, we would say, you know, cosmetics experience not required, food service experience would be amazing, because that means you know how to put a recipe together, you know how to keep your space cleaning, you know how to sanitize, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of base skills that food service experience gives you that transfer over beautifully to many personal care product processes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
That's a great tip.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you, Ayana. Yeah. I think we're done, Andy. Yay. Thanks for the awesome questions, everyone.
Spectacular. Spectacular.
Yeah.
This is a last go. Anybody got any questions? Please. If not, you can always of course, send them to either us and we can get them to Jamyla, or you can send them to her yourself. And you know, in between taking over the world, you might get a response.
That's so terrible. I'm the worst, but also, you know, life, right?
Listen,
we must have empathy for each other in these times.
Listen, we got to. It's literally what we can do. All right, and with that, I am going to reclaim host privileges.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for this incredible presentation. Thank you so much for giving us your time today, Jamyla. Thank you to you all for giving us your time. Again, this workshop will be available on our website in the coming weeks, and you can head over to madeinbaltimore.org to check out some of the previous workshops in the meantime. Again, thank you to our parent agency, Baltimore Development Corporation. Thank you to Jamyla. Thank you to all of you that submitted amazing questions. And with that, we are finished for the day. Thank you so much.